Calvin Russell is not signing today, and that is bad news for Syracuse football.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You know, I kind of blame myself a little bit because I woke up this morning on Wednesday, December 3rd, and I thought it was going to be a relatively uneventful early signing period for Syracuse. They were going to lock up all their recruits. They were going to have a top 30 class in the country. We were going to do a mini podcast reaction here on Locked On Syracuse, and we were all going to go about our lovely Wednesday, December 3rd. But that is not exactly what is happening here. Calvin Russell, a five-star wide receiver out of Miami, Florida, who has been committed to Syracuse since July, announced today that he will not sign with a program today. We'll go over the latest with Calvin Russell. I'll give you my thoughts as far as a panic meter is concerned. Will he ultimately sign with Syracuse? Don't know at this point. And how does this look for Fran Brown in Syracuse if Calvin Russell does sign and if Calvin Russell does not sign? All that and more coming up here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. And I just realized I forgot to introduce myself. Hello, Jackson Holzer, Locked On Syracuse. Thank you for making us your first listen. Every single day you're on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Of course, always free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. So, five-star wide receiver Calvin Russell, as said already, he will not be signing with Syracuse today. He was on IG Live. Thought he was going to say, all right, that's it, going to sign with Syracuse. He had not given any indication that he was going to do otherwise. But he went up on that podium with the microphone and said he needs to do more thinking and that he's not signing with anyone today. Calvin Russell is 6'5", 195 pounds out of Miami, Florida. He attends Miami Northwestern High School, which is a high school football power, well known. As far as recruiting rankings are concerned, this is a pretty big deal considering he is a five-star. On 24/7 Sports, he is five-star, 23rd overall player in the nation, and the number 2 wide receiver overall in the country. On ESPN, he is a 4-star wide receiver, but he is rated 32nd overall in the nation and the number 4 wide receiver overall in the country. On3 and Rivals is where you see the outlier for Calvin Russell in his recruitment as far as his rankings are concerned, but he's still highly rated over on there. I'll give it to you. He's a 4-star, 214th overall, and the number 27 overall wide receiver in the country. Bottom line is that if you use ESPN or 24/7 Sports, if Calvin Russell were to commit to Syracuse, he would be the highest rated Syracuse recruit since Johnnie Morant in the early 2000s. That's right, folks. This is a very big commitment if Syracuse were to get Calvin Russell. And that's why we made such a big deal about Calvin Russell over the past 5-6 months, because he's an elite player, yes, but also Syracuse hasn't gotten a player like him out of high school in a very long time. For the backstory, for those that don't know, Calvin Russell, he was recruited by pretty much every program you can think of in the nation, but he verbally committed to Syracuse back in July, and he has stuck with that recruitment, or that commitment, I should say, ever since. He has frequently cited that the main reason he signed with, or not signed with Syracuse, oh boy, I'm jumping the gun, but the main reason why he verbally committed to Syracuse is his relationship with Fran Brown. In fact, Brian Smith, Locked On Portal podcast host, recruiting expert here at the Locked On Podcast Network, has frequently told us the story here on this channel about when he met Calvin Russell, and he flat out asked him, and I think it's a very fair question given his pedigree, why are you considering Syracuse? I mean, Syracuse, we all love Syracuse, but they're not Ohio State. They're not Oregon. We'll talk about Michigan later on in the show. They don't typically get guys like Calvin Russell. Again, he would be the highest rated recruit since Johnnie Morant in the early 2000s for Syracuse. So he asked him point blank, why are you considering Syracuse? And Calvin Russell told Brian Smith to his face, quote, Fran Brown. That's what he said. That was the reason. Because of the relationship he has with Fran Brown. And as Brian Smith always says, whenever he goes on any Locked On show and his own show as well, relationships are ultimately what matter in recruiting. Because we can talk about finances all we want, but once you get in the ballpark, it's all about the best relationship. And so Fran Brown and Calvin Russell, for months, they had a great relationship. And we'll talk about later on reasons why this could be happening, because truthfully, we don't fully know. I've tried my best to gather all the intel that I possibly could, and we don't know yet what's going on here. As far as my thoughts are concerned, we're going to get to the panic meter in the next portion of this show. But my initial reaction is that I am surprised. There were no indications that Calvin Russell was not going to sign with Syracuse today. Yes, I know he had been visiting Miami over the course of the year, but you have to keep in mind, the kid is from South Florida. Miami is in his backyard. So it makes sense. He's also got friends on the Miami football team. And I just figured, well, if he was going to flip his commitment, he would have done it by now. It's been 5 months since he verbally committed to Syracuse. So I'm surprised by it. Very surprised. I mean, comment your thoughts right now in the comments section below. Now, I do want to be clear with this. I'm not mad at Calvin Russell. Calvin Russell is about to make a life-changing decision. He is about to decide where he wants to go to school. And I know the transfer portal exists, so you can always change your mind even when you're at school if you want to go to a different one. But this is a big deal for anyone. You know, we've all made college decisions before. We weren't making college decisions based on, trying to play in the NFL, because that's ultimately probably what Calvin Russell's goal is, to play in the NFL. So I'm not mad at him. His job right now is to make the best decision and the most informed decision for himself. His job is not to do right by Syracuse, to do what's in the best interest of Syracuse. If that was his job, then, well, he should have just signed with Syracuse today, but that's not the reality. So I am not mad at Calvin Russell for wanting to take more time and consider other options. And if he ultimately decides to flip away from Syracuse, it's not Calvin Russell's fault. I'm not going to be mad at him. I'm going to be mad at the situation because selfishly, myself and many of you Syracuse fans, we want Calvin Russell. He's a 5-star wide receiver. He's an excellent player. This is someone who we could pencil in probably for next year as a starter on this team. And not just someone who we're like, oh yeah, let's give this random true freshman a shot like we saw over the course of the 2025 season. No, this guy's a 5-star player. He can make an immediate impact day one. So yeah, selfishly, I want Calvin Russell, but I'm not mad at Calvin Russell personally if he decides he would like to go elsewhere. The good news is that one way or another, this situation is going to, or it's expected to, get resolved pretty quickly. 24/7 Sports insider Tom Loy, he's been all over the place today. Obviously, it's a very big day in college football with the early signing period, but he mentioned when Calvin Russell announced that he was not going to sign, that Calvin Russell is still expected to sign this week. Now, coming up, we'll go over the possible programs that Calvin Russell could be considering based on what Tom Loy was saying. But one way or another, this situation will get resolved over the next couple of days, whether it's with Syracuse or another school. Comment your thoughts right now in the comment section below. Coming up, I'll go over my thoughts as far as a panic meter is concerned and other programs that could be in pursuit of Calvin Russell. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. So if you want to get right in the middle of the action this season, visit fanduel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Locked on Syracuse, I'm Jackson Holzer. We are continuing to cover this developing story about five-star wide receiver Calvin Russell deciding not to sign with a program today. He had previously, and I guess he still is, verbally committed to Syracuse. Is that going to change? Let's talk about it right now. My panic meter, this is just my opinion and reading the tea leaves and trying to gather all the information I possibly can on this, is currently at a 9 out of 10. That Calvin Russell will flip away from Syracuse over the next 24 to 48 hours. That's where I am at right now. So I apologize that I am not super optimistic about this, but I think I have good reason to not be very optimistic about this. But I guess I can give you the silver lining and explain to you why I don't think that this is a 10 out of 10 situation right here. And it's two reasons why it's not a 10 out of 10. Number one, Calvin Russell didn't say he is flipping his commitment. He said that he is not signing with anyone today. So as far as I'm concerned, Syracuse is still the team that he is verbally committed to. That can't hurt. And number two, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is that he has this tight relationship with Fran Brown, and Fran Brown is still with Syracuse. Now, I joked in the Syracuse group chat, if you know, that, hey, maybe Calvin Russell is going to follow Fran Brown to Penn State because Penn State still needs a head coach, which is hilarious because they were the ones who started the whole coach firing process. And here they are. They're the last team standing here. It's like playing a game of musical chairs, and they were the ones left out. They were first to the ballroom to play musical chairs, and somehow they did not find a chair. So I'm obviously kidding. I don't think that Penn State is now going to hire Fran Brown. I was making a joke there. But the point being is that the only reasons why I am not at a 10 out of 10 panic meter that Calvin Russell is going to flip away from Syracuse is because, number one, he didn't flip away from Syracuse today. He just said that he's not going to sign with Syracuse today. And number two, his relationship with Fran Brown, and Fran Brown is still with Syracuse. That being said, I'm very worried. Very, very worried, especially when you consider the other programs that are involved. And this is from Tom Loy, a recruiting expert over at 24/7 Sports. There are two teams that you really need to keep an eye on here. Number one is Michigan. Michigan was the runner-up for Calvin Russell back in July. In fact, I think Michigan was very surprised that Calvin Russell did not sign with them back in early July. And according to Tom Loy, Michigan is reportedly offering Calvin Russell the opportunity to play both football and basketball. Syracuse, of course, is doing the same. I mean, they have to if they want to get him. But if Michigan is also giving him that same opportunity, then all of a sudden that advantage that Syracuse has of being able to offer him both football and basketball, well, that just goes out the window because Michigan is offering the very same thing. And the other program to keep an eye on, and I'll admit it's kind of mixed messaging, but I'm just going on based on what Tom Loy is saying, is Miami. Calvin Russell, it's no secret, he hasn't hit it at all. He has attended many Miami games over the course of the 2025 season. I mean, it's literally Calvin Russell's hometown. And as we talked about earlier, he's got friends on the team. I think his mother actually went to Miami as well, if I'm not mistaken. There's obviously a lot of relationship ties between Calvin Russell and Miami. So the two teams to really keep an eye on here are Michigan and Miami. And of course, there is that possibility that this whole podcast is moot and Calvin Russell decides to sign with Syracuse, which I think we'd all be very happy about. Why is this happening? Is probably a question that's on all of our minds right now. And I'll admit to you, we don't really know why he didn't sign with Syracuse today, other than he just wants to do more thinking. I mean, what does that mean? What happened between now and July and all those other times where he kept on saying he's going to sign with Syracuse on signing day? So I wrote down a list of possible reasons, but I will admit to you that there is nothing really concrete about this. And we might not find out until we finally get a resolution about Calvin Russell. But here are some reasons. Money could certainly be a factor here. Did some program significantly step up their financial offer? Remember what I talked about earlier in the show, how relationships are what matter in recruiting. They matter in recruiting really when the financial opportunity is in the ballpark. If there's an offer out there for Calvin Russell that is not in the ballpark of what Syracuse is offering, if it's significantly more, he has to consider it. Even if he has a tighter relationship with Fran Brown, money talks. So money could absolutely be a factor in this. But again, we don't know. And who knows if we're ever really going to find out the true reason here. Number two, is it that Syracuse just had that bad of a season and he was watching Syracuse over the course of the year and said, I got to think twice about this program? It's possible. I mean, we all watched Syracuse football this season, and whether you're an optimistic fan, a pessimistic fan, a neutral fan, you call it like you see it, whatever the case may be, everyone can admit that this was a really poor product that Syracuse put on post Steve Angeli injury. Post Steve Angeli injury, they were by far and away the worst team in power conference football. Wasn't even close. I mean, you could sit here and try to argue Oklahoma State all you want. I think Oklahoma State would destroy Syracuse football. I mean, Syracuse got destroyed on their home turf by Boston College. So you tell me, Syracuse or Oklahoma State? I'm taking Oklahoma State all day against Syracuse from the 2025 season post Steve Angeli injury. So did Calvin Russell see that and say, you know what? I got concerns now about this program. Maybe. It's possible. Is it that he wants to be closer to home? I mean, that would really favor Miami. Is it that he wants to play for a bigger program than Syracuse? He wants, I guess, more of a spotlight. That would favor both Miami and Michigan. I mean, it would especially favor Michigan because they play in the game every year. And don't kid yourself, Michigan and Ohio State sell the game on literally every single recruit that they go after. You get to play in the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry, which is the best rivalry in college football, and it's one of the best rivalries in North American sports. So yeah, they sell it. That's a pretty big deal. If you're a recruit, you definitely have to consider the spotlight and the attention that you get by playing in that game. Syracuse doesn't have that. I wish Syracuse had a rivalry like that, but they don't, and nobody does. Nobody has that. Even Alabama and Auburn, the Iron Bowl, even Florida, Georgia, Florida State, Texas A&M, whatever the case may be, they don't compare to the game. So obviously those programs are going to sell it. And this is the one that would really, really concern me. This final reason here. Is it possible that the relationship between Fran Brown and Calvin Russell soured over the course of these 5 to 6 months? We don't know, but we also can't rule out anything. Maybe that's why Calvin Russell's reconsidering all his options. We don't know. Those are just some reasons that I wrote down because this is a very surprising development. So we have to try to figure out what is going on. And so I'm listing out all these possibilities and we'll see what ultimately sticks. We may never find out. It does not look good right now for Syracuse. I'll admit that. The only silver linings are that we know, at least for now, he has a tight relationship with Fran Brown and he hasn't committed elsewhere. He just said that he's not signing with Syracuse today. Do you think that Calvin Russell is ultimately going to sign with Syracuse? Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, coming up, what does this mean for Fran Brown and Syracuse? Find out next on Locked On Syracuse. Locked On Syracuse, I'm Jackson Holzer. Once again, five-star wide receiver Calvin Russell announced today that he is not signing with anyone. And since he was verbally committed to Syracuse, that is not a good sign for Syracuse football in getting their highest-rated recruit since Johnnie Morant in the early 2000s. How does this look for Fran Brown and Syracuse? How does this look for Calvin Russell? Let's start with the Calvin Russell part. As I said earlier, I'm not mad at Calvin Russell one way or another. If Calvin Russell says, I would like to play at a different school than Syracuse, yeah, selfishly, I would be upset. And that's because I'm a Syracuse fan. And Calvin Russell is a great player and he has earned the right to make this big time decision. It's a big time decision. And no matter what he decides to do, he's got to think what's best for himself and his long term future here. And ultimately, if Calvin Russell decides to sign with Syracuse, we're not going to care. Who cares that he didn't sign on Wednesday, December 3rd, if he decides on Thursday, December 4th, or Friday, December 5th, or he decides to wait to the next signing period, which I don't even remember off the top of my head, but the next signing period is some point in the spring. It doesn't matter. If Calvin Russell is wearing a Syracuse uniform for the 2026 season, we're all going to be happy. This is all going to be water under the bridge. Who cares that he decided to not sign with Syracuse on the first day of the early signing period? We want the player. So if we have to wait, fine. I'm fine with being patient. I'll take the player anyway. I'm not going to sit here and tell Calvin Russell, go kick rocks because he didn't want to sign with Syracuse today. So take your time, sure. And I hope that Syracuse is there waiting for him if he decides to, hey, I do want to put pen to paper. He's a great player. This is not some, two-star recruit out of the middle of nowhere. This is a five-star wide receiver, one of the best overall players in the state of Florida, which is known as one of the recruiting hotbeds for football. If Calvin Russell says, I'm playing for Syracuse, we're taking him. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't care what the time frame is. From a Fran Brown and a Syracuse angle, if he were to get Calvin Russell to sign on the dotted line, again, it goes back to this. It doesn't matter. Who cares that he didn't sign on December 3rd? Fran Brown got us what we were all asking for. He got us the crown jewel of the 2026 recruiting class. So it would be great. All is forgiven. And truthfully, there's nothing to really be mad about right now because nothing has fully happened yet. It's like we're bracing ourselves for the worst, but there is still that possibility that the worst doesn't come. That he just says, you know what? I gave it more thought and I want to sign with Syracuse. Great. So it would be a great look for Fran Brown. No harm, no foul. We're good. But if he doesn't sign with Syracuse, if he does decide to go elsewhere, I don't want to hear the excuses. This would be a terrible look for Fran Brown. Because Fran Brown, I've hyped him up as this way, and many others have hyped him up this way, and he has earned the praise so far that he is an elite recruiter. And he is an elite recruiter. What he has done with Syracuse since taking over Syracuse has been unprecedented for Syracuse in the recruiting era. He is, in his first two classes, now in his first three classes, with or without Calvin Russell, produced higher rated classes than like the 5 previous head coaches before him. He has significantly elevated Syracuse recruiting. But this was the crown jewel. This was everything that we were eventually hoping for. That finally Syracuse was going to get an elite recruit out of high school, a 5-star player, one that we have not seen since the early 2000s with Johnnie Morant. This was it. This is Fran Brown's shining moment as a recruiter at Syracuse. being able to get a 5-star out of South Florida, of all places, to come play for Syracuse. This isn't a 5-star receiver, out of Binghamton that's in your backyard, kind of like Messiah Hampton, who maybe we can go over here in the next couple of podcasts, but it's not like that. And by the way, he was going to sign with Syracuse if Ross Douglas had stayed with Syracuse, but he went to Oregon, and so that's why he's with Oregon. TBD on that. Point being is that nobody really thought that Syracuse was going to get Calvin Russell. Nobody did. Aside from us optimistic Syracuse fans who really read between the lines and really were paying attention to this, realizing that Syracuse had a chance, nobody nationally really gave it much thought. What 5-star out of South Florida is going to sign with Syracuse? This isn't basketball. This is football. There's 3 big-time programs in the state. You got Michigan recruiting him. I think Ohio State offered him. Alabama offered him. Anyone could have gotten him. And he's going to sign with Syracuse? So this was it. This was Fran Brown's signature moment. And it could still be Fran Brown's signature moment. But it's a bad look if he doesn't get him, because he is supposed to be an elite recruiter. And you combine that with the results we saw on the field for Syracuse in 2025. The hope was that, hey, you know what? You could see the recruiting class at the light of the end of the tunnel. They're going to get this 5-star kid, and it's not just going to be about him. It's going to be about all the players that are following behind him as well. Because Syracuse, they still have a pretty good, relative to their standards, a pretty good 2026 recruiting class without Calvin Russell in it. They're signing most of their players. They got some 4-stars in there, but you needed him. You need this guy in the recruiting class. You need it to solidify top 30. Where's it going to fall if Calvin Russell doesn't sign? It's not going to be top 30 in the nation. It might be top 40. It'll definitely be still inside the top 50, but that won't be new for the Fran Brown era, because the expectations with Fran Brown and recruiting, they have changed. They have changed because we have seen in 2024 and 2025 produce really good Syracuse recruiting classes relative to Syracuse. 2026 was supposed to be the step up, and Calvin Russell is needed for it to be a step up. So I don't want to hear excuses. He's got to get them. Figure it out. If he needs more money, give him more money. If the relationship soured, that's not on Calvin Russell. That's on Fran Brown. If another program is selling him hard, well, sell him even harder. Do what you got to do to get this kid in a Syracuse uniform for the 2026 season. And again, I'll be patient. I'll wait. It's fine. He wants to take his time. Cool. Totally fine. Totally understand it. You got to get the kid one way or another. Are you with me on this? Are you against me on this? Are you worried about it? Are you not worried about it? Comment your thoughts right now in the comment section below. As far as what's coming up on this podcast in the near future, we're going to continue to monitor this story. Hopefully, I'll be able to record right after Calvin Russell does make a decision one way or another. But fair warning, and I would like to thank Calvin Russell for this, for making my life that much harder. Not to say that my life is like hard or anything. It's just that on Friday, on a personal note, I'm moving. And so I was not planning on doing a podcast on Friday. So if Calvin Russell decides to sign on Friday, you might have to wait till Saturday to get a podcast, I guess. So hopefully between now, at the time you're watching or listening to this, and Thursday, Calvin Russell ultimately decides to make his decision one way or another. We'll continue to track this story. I still have other podcasts that are in the back burner right now, but I have to put them on the back burner because we don't know what's going on with Calvin Russell. Syracuse football, quarterback options in the transfer portal, what Fran Brown's going to do there. I want to talk some Syracuse basketball. So, because on a brighter note, I mean, they just beat Tennessee and they rose significantly in the net rankings. They still got work to do, but they rose significantly and they've given themselves now a chance at being a tournament team this year. And so hopefully we can talk more about that, but we got to track this story more for the time being. You have any suggestions for podcasts you want in the future? I guess feel free to let me know right now in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, hit that like button. If you really enjoyed the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On Syracuse, and let's hope that Calvin Russell decides to sign with Syracuse. Take care, everyone.